Welcome to Gloves Off, hosted by award-winning trial and personal injury attorney Ven Johnson, founder of Ven Johnson Law. In each episode, Ven goes toe-to-toe with guests, hashing out legal matters around the most talked-about news stories and issues. We don't pull any punches, so some language and topics may not be suitable for younger listeners.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, fighters. Podcast number 27, Gloves Off. Where have we been? Oh my God, you guys are blowing me up. Sorry about that. Been a little busy lately, but it doesn't matter because our special guest today, ready for this title, you guys will love this, The Psychology of the Law and Media. Or would it be The Media and the Law? Jason Carr, media expert. Tracy Stein, psychological guru.
Love it.
Thanks for joining. Jason, you got to tell the folks about how we met and how this whole podcast got set up because of the Jason Carr Drive.
Well, remember, it used to be called SEMTA, the Southeast Michigan Transit Authority, and you and I were waiting for a bus. The year was 1987, and we struck up a conversation.
Apparently, we never caught the bus, and we walked.
And no, it was like waiting for, what is it, Godot? And you and I talked, and we figured out that we have common ground, both bright individuals, both intellectually curious.
We're not talking about Tracy and you. We're not talking about Tracy and you now.
I can't wait to hear what's coming down the pike. Let's go.
This is interesting to be on this side of the microphone because normally, as the sponsor,
you're running the shit.
Title and presenting sponsor of Jason Carr Drive, my live stream, normally I'm hosting and you're my guest. But let's be honest, it's like James Brown or Kurt Menefee on the NFL today, or NFL on Fox. I'm merely setting the table for you to go off like Don Cherry. I don't even know the guy's name.
Do you like the collars? Do you like the collar or the Don Cherry collars?
For the record, if you're listening, Ven has on a very smart plum plaid coat with a light blue shirt, white collar.
White collar, the Don Cherry collar. Maybe not quite so wide.
It's very fabulous.
It's very Bill Bonds, the shirt you have on.
God rest his soul.
And a very elegant, but at the same time, rich and authoritative tie. Your neckwear is on point today.
But thank you. All right, but your show. Give a shout out to your show, and then we're going to talk about how you and Tracy got on and how you got me on and we got here.
Oh, thank you. I do a show after almost just shy of 30 full years in broadcast television throughout the state of Michigan, including Detroit. I have a live stream show on Facebook every morning at 9 a.m., Monday through Friday, and most weeknights, typically Monday through Thursday at 9 p.m., called Overdrive. Ven is the title and presenting sponsor, 855 Ven Fights.
Shout out.
Among other sponsors, but you are the reason for the season. And you come on the show, and we have some laughs, so we talk law, and that's what we're going to do today. And it's interesting that Tracy's here because Tracy comes on my show typically every Wednesday, and we have a lot of laughs. And now we should probably tell everybody listening that Tracy Stein, who's a therapist, but also a very good friend of Ven's and of mine, this is really a round table, a panel of true friends who do different professions.
Tracy, tell them who they are, and you are.
Who they are. I'm thrilled to be here. I have been a therapist for a very long time. I specialized in sexual assault, domestic violence, worked in the court system as a victim advocate. I'm now working on the law side in an interesting way, consulting with an attorney on a case that is mental health negligence.
Wow, that's sad.
Yeah, it's a tragic story, but I do, it's a fun place to be because I was pretty micro for so long in rooms with pretty one-on-one, and I've kind of enjoyed making the switch to being a little more macro and trying to change systems a bit more. And I just love you two crazy cats.
Well, okay, Jay, how did you get Tracy on your show? Other than she's beautiful, wonderful, intelligent, and adds everything. Because I remember, I believe you guys up and say, I want to be on the show with Tracy on the show, or some just really bad, whiny nonsense thing.
And we made it happen.
And you were like, okay, it's okay.
How did that work?
No, it's one of those things that it goes back years. I was on two different Detroit TV stations for years doing talk shows on both stations. And you get to be friends with somebody and, you kind of realize a little bell goes off or a little light bulb and you say to yourself, wow, this person, in this case Tracy, would be a great talk show, guest, co-host, whatever the case may be, because you either have it or you don't. You can be the
she
brightest.
has it and then some.
I'm so glad I came. This is amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tracy Stein Show.
Yeah, it's all been a cover for now that I have you here.
Anyway, when Tracy comes on the show, my viewers, my listeners respond to her energy, to her humor, and hence she's sitting here with you on your show.
Well, I have to admit, Tracy did go to a spectacular undergraduate university.
Very true.
Actually, not a university. Tracy,
No.
please explain.
Oh, well, I went to this college that is affectionately known as the weird kids up on the hill, Kalamazoo College.
Whoop, whoop, Mighty
Yep.
Hornets.
Yep, let's go. Which you, sir, Mr. Johnson, did also attend.
Trace, 40 years. 40 next.
You were in school 40
in
years?
2 years. It
Explains
felt,
a lot.
it felt like it to my professors.
What am
assure
I?
you.
I'm at 20.
Yeah.
20.
My 40-year anniversary will be, I think it's the October 6th weekend or whatever. We're
Yeah.
going back
Yeah, it's
for
30
that.
years
Are
for me
you?
out of state.
Isn't that crazy? It's like impossible that it
No,
can be
it's a
like
special little place that bonds all who went as the
Wow.
weird little kids on the hill.
40 years out of college, 30 years out of college, 20 years out
that.
of
See?
college.
Oh my God. Look
We've
how
got
that-
all the demographics covered,
Meant
Ben.
Oh, here we go. That's why you're on Gloves
Yeah.
Off podcast. All right. Well,
Oh, even Chelsea, the producer over here, she even clapped.
no,
a
yeah,
little
she's
bit.
out for 2 years. So thank you for laughing, Chelsea.
See, we really got all
See,
of
we
it.
got it going on. All right, well, guys, let's come back full circle, and let's talk about from your guys' perspective. I mean, we could talk about so much crap that is out there, and I shouldn't say crap because to me it's fascinating. But when I think about Tracy and Jason, the interaction, well, psychology in the law is in part when I'm talking about jury trials, right? It's everywhere because it's a social process as much as it's a legal process. But then when we throw in the media coverage, the before, the during, the after, I find it absolutely fascinating. And I hear a lot of people kind of complaining about it and so forth. But all right, Jason, let's just go first and foremost. Right now, media. Do you think the media currently, right now, where we are in the world, covers the legal process fairly? Big breathe
That
in.
is
Big breathe
depends.
in.
It depends on what media outlet you're watching. First and foremost, is it a biased media outlet? Does it purport to be unbiased? And to a certain degree, there are those that say that they're unbiased and they're just the truth, or whatever the case may be, whatever the saying or the phrase, but they in fact are biased.
Right.
So there's always that consideration. I think that really the OJ trial probably set the stage for the media circus atmosphere that pervades the landscape. And then you add social media, and then you add smartphones, and then you add what was already a 24/7 news cycle thanks to cable TV news and Ted Turner and all that back in the 80s.
CNN and
All of
TNT.
it brought us to this moment where everything is hot takes on social media. You hear something, and then, for instance, in the case of Target, there was this story the other day that Target was caught with a bunch of food in carts outside the store, and everybody was shaming Target for food waste. And well, it turned out they were throwing out the food because they had lost power.
Right.
So you apply that same sort of hot take logic to the law and
Right.
to court cases and criminal cases and civil cases and whatnot, and you end up with this interesting stew that I think goes beyond: is the coverage balanced? Is the coverage fair? Is the coverage sensationalized? Is the coverage clickbait? Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to attract eyeballs to their content. I'd say that's the more pervasive thing than whether the coverage is swayed one way or the other, left or right or what have you.
Well, Trace, you are now involved, obviously, as a therapist forever, and now getting involved in certain legal cases. From your perspective, what is psychology and the law? How do those two things go together as it relates to what we see going on in the media and its coverage of the law?
It's so tricky. I think what seems to have gone by the wayside is that instead of looking at something objectively and really taking a pause to decide how you feel about it or what you think, we're told what to think all the time. So we're told that this is wrong, this is egregious, this is, just horrific. We use these words now that in being told something. So
or crazy. Or stupid.
Crazy, stupid, just, unfathomable, right? And I think what goes away with that is that people would rather be wrong but feel secure in their opinion than feel uncomfortable in not knowing how they feel and waiting for it to kind of play out in real time, if that makes sense. So it's this, I think we have kind of this discomfort and not having the answers, not knowing. If you say to somebody, how do you feel about, you did OJ, we'll throw that out there. How do you feel? Well, I think he's guilty, or I think he's not guilty. It's this, and it's so polarized now, and we're all so polarized, as a nation at this point, that to sort of be in the middle or not be sure as, a consumer of media is frowned upon and judged either way, I think.
Right.
So it's a discomfort in the unknown, which used to kind of be a more, unbiased way of presenting facts or telling educating people as to the law process and what's going on, instead of, the sensationalized, indictments and mugshots and, it's so extreme.
Let me back up and throw a quick story at you guys. So in the 1990s, whatever the heck, I can't remember the year, I was working with Jeffrey Feiger in his office, and we had the Jenny Jones civil trial.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And that was, at that time, one of the biggest criminal cases in Michigan law, where Jonathan Schmidt was found guilty of murder, where after being on Jenny Jones' show and allegedly outed by Scott Amador, our client, a gay man who said he had a crush, if you will, on Jonathan Schmidt on live television, by the way, which was taped, and it wasn't live, and they never taped it. But of course, the contestants didn't really know that. And so anyway, after that criminal trial, and that was, guys, when Court TV had just come out. And then the civil case came up, and Jeff and I tried that for about 6 months. And
You're talking mid-90s, 95, 96, 97.
somewhere in there,
Yeah,
right.
right in there.
So I was probably like a 12, 13-year lawyer, give or take at the time. So I'd done it before, but not on that magnitude. And it was a national case. And Jeff took me aside and said to me, you got to understand that we have two different things going on here. We have what we do in the courtroom, and then we have the public opinion, and we have television inside.
Spin.
Right. So what you're going to find out is, remember back in those days, he was doing Jack Kevorkian's defense, so
Right,
Dr. Death, and
right.
so he had literally mastered
Court of
I'll call it
opinion.
and media and good and bad and
Sure.
intentionally doing the whole thing, if you will. So I give him nothing but love and credit for that. But the fact of the matter is that you got to understand is you're going to be in the courtroom all day, and on the way out, they're going to ask you questions as if they were inside, knew everything, and even if they have, because we had live TV in the civil case, you're going to think you were in a different place. Mm-hmm. And I swear to God, you guys, that's exactly what happened.
Like a game of telephone.
Right? So Tom Gerrels, I remember him
The ABC News
distinctly.
correspondent.
But before that, he was Court TV along with Beth Karras, and they were the two main. And every night after court, I would go out there and usually watch Jeff, but every once in a while, it's a long trial, 6-week trial. He's like, you do it, I'm tired. So I would do it, and I'm arguing with this guy, and finally I just said, did you watch the monitor at all of what on today? Why are you absolutely misrepresenting the test? So it got heated like that,
Sure,
yeah.
right?
Sure.
And so it was just interesting to see how that whole thing played out. And then all of a sudden, now we're launched into, of course, OJ was not too far, I think, before that. I think, Jason, you mentioned that. And it's just so interesting to see how, as a lawyer, we're here. So you can say you don't like it, but you gotta be involved. It's like, don't hate the play, I hate the game. The United States attorney, you guys, every time they announce charges, where do you learn about it? On TV.
Right.
They hold a press conference to tell you, here's all the bad things the defendants did. Mm-hmm. What happened to presumed innocent?
Right.
And by the way, also, I was involved in a criminal trial that was much in the public arena. Jeffrey and I were. Luckily, we were acquitted. That means found not guilty. But 6-week criminal trial, all over the media, but that was federal court, so there's no live TV. Question, Jason Carr, is it better to have TV in the courtroom or not?
The first word that just popped in my mind when you hit me with that, and we should probably let the listener know, and by the way, thanks for listening to the podcast, that this is not scripted. Tracy and I, as your guests, we were not provided questions.
I didn't tell you anything
Nope.
we were going to talk about.
We didn't.
I never do.
We both showed up cold. Even as you were asking me the question, the word that came to my mind was transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's court TV, right? There's just the idea of an eye in the sky, eye of God.
Watching everything.
Watching everything, unexpurgated, unedited, unfiltered, unspun. There's that, right?
Right.
But then there's going to be the way that a story is constructed for a biased news network or a biased program, or even in an unbiased. There is no agenda. They're just trying to do their best to filter it all down to a minute and 30 seconds with sound bites.
Right.
Oftentimes, I don't think that there's evil intent. I don't think that there's spin intent on the part of the reporter or the correspondent. There might be better acumen in some reporters than other reporters. There might be greater intellectual ability in some reporters than other reporters to be able to watch a day's proceedings and distill it down to its essence,
Right.
to where it's factual and it's compelling television and it clocks in at $1.35. That's your sort of inherent bias. I think in many cases is the reporter fastidious in their distilling of the facts to where nothing's lost, or are they sloppy, or are they underqualified? That is, I think, more the rub than they have a political bent left or right, or they want to be salacious, and so they're going to take this one detail that came out in court that day and spin it into this grander thing.
Right.
That might be true of tabloid television shows and their correspondents, more so than like your local evening news.
Right.
But I could go off on a tangent and use up most of this podcast talking about, and I won't, but without getting too far into the weeds, anybody listening probably has they have a learned bias that the media in this country is biased and this, that, and the other thing, and they're told what to say. Well, with the exception of some smaller TV stations in smaller markets in the Midwest and the so-called flyover country, and some stations in the South, which it has been documented they're being told what to say because they're all part of the same ownership group. And you see the local anchors in different towns saying the exact same script.
That's
right?
scary.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. Now, but the vast majority, then, are not. Take, for instance, Detroit, but we're not going to say Detroit. We're going to say Metropolis, which sort of mirrors Detroit, which is one of the best, if not the best, news market in the entire country, with now 4 stations doing news. You know what those stations are concerned about? Beating each other in the ratings.
Right.
They're not concerned about swaying left or swaying right.
That's interesting.
They just want to beat each other senseless in the ratings. That's all they care about. And do they want to do that? If it bleeds, it leads, and be salacious? Is that an agenda? I don't believe so. It's just literally like, who's the best people we can put out there to attract the most eyeballs?
But then politically speaking...
Metropolis speaking, not Detroit.
If Metropolis speaking, those people tend to be one party or one side, we'll just go right, left, than the other, then they may play to that one side.
Sure. But I'm saying in local TV... that's less of an issue than it is in tabloid TV or cable news or national news.
Well, that's actually somewhat reassuring. Tracy, do you video and put on the live stream your one-on-one sessions with your patients?
No, absolutely
that
not.
might violate a few ethical rules.
Might be frowned upon a bit.
But then, why would we allow the public to see what goes on in a courtroom, even though it is public by nature, right?
Yeah.
Where do you see this kind of from a psychological, emotional standpoint, us having publicized, but television in the courtrooms watching real cases in real time?
Well, what's gone is the expectation of privacy. That's not, it doesn't exist anymore. And if you're accused of a crime, even if it doesn't go, it's gone, right? We know about it.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the media. The way that attorneys, defense attorneys, different people have to handle people is very different. What you wear, how you speak,
Right.
what you look. Are you interested? Are you disinterested? Are you, smiling at the wrong time? And what I wonder about.
Did you cry? Were
Did
you
you cry?
fake crying?
Did you fake? Are
Were you
like,
over crying?
Right? Are you like looking at somebody in the jury? Everything is so under a microscope.
Right.
And then judged and analyzed,
Right.
right? So from a psychological perspective, that's really fascinating to me, to watch human behavior in different situations, to watch consistencies, inconsistencies. You can tell, I believe, when somebody's being genuine or not, unless they're a complete psychopath. And so, and in that
I mean,
point,
are people out there that lie every single
yeah,
day?
they
and-
sure are, but they're really good
Get away
at
with
it.
it?
So
Okay.
sometimes you don't know. But what I wonder is how it's changed the criminal justice process,
Right.
because now you're not just working with a jury of people selected. You're now working with every single person who's paying attention to
Right.
that. And that matters, right? And a lot of times, juries aren't completely sequestered. Right?
They're never
they're
sequestered.
supposed to be.
I will tell you. Well, no, they're not.
Right.
Just so you know.
And they're never, even though they're not supposed to pay attention or not, that was probably not that difficult to do in 1985.
Right.
That you just didn't read the newspaper.
But how about now? By the way, every single trial, criminal or civil, the judge reads every single day, or a lot of them don't even read it now. They're so used to telling the jury, do not look at the media. If you see the media and has anything to do with this case, ignore it, turn it off, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then the question becomes guys, from a legal perspective, are they?
Can we live in a self-imposed bubble and escape the 24/7 social media, smartphone news cycle? And you'd have to live under a rock.
Well, it's also the jury will please disregard.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Unring the bell, as we
What?
call it in our industry.
It's kind of hard to unhear something.
Correct.
And also the objection to it and why I'm not supposed to hear that.
Correct.
And what does that mean? And what don't I know now? And maybe I should pay more attention to whatever I'm supposed to disregard. It's like
So-
it has the complete opposite
This is so
effect.
good. Thank you. All right. Sorry. I digress. Legal sidebar. So in court, when we're in trial and a question gets asked, and then before the witness answers, the other attorney stands up and says, objection, Your Honor, and gives legal basis of why it should not be admissible. In other words, no answer or an answer. And so what Tracy's talking about, and this is one of the things that I talk about all the time with lawyers, it's the social process of a trial. They hear everything. And then when you object, just like Tracy just mentioned, some people will tell you it awakens the jury from their slumber. Okay.
Sure.
And I'm not suggesting that everyone sleeps, but guys, it's an
Well, it's
8-hour
kind of-
day
and
and it can
gets a
be
bit
mundane.
monotonous,
And all of a sudden it's
yeah.
like, wait a minute. And then when the judge says, yeah, you should disregard this, is that really possible? But under the law, it is possible. And that's what happens. But again, that's part of the psychology of all this. And then I throw out there again, in terms of guys, the whole media coverage, how do you ignore it? And a lot of times in what I do, folks, some of you may not know this, very few civil cases are in the news. So
Sure.
most jurors never hear anything about the trial that I'm currently doing. So it'd be easier, except for maybe the criminal trials. I'm not a criminal lawyer. They might hear something really otherwise. But it's an interesting issue. And Jason, you mentioned, or I guess the one that comes to mind in the most recent. All right, one of these days, I want you guys to come back because I really want to talk about the whole Trump situation right now and not talk politics, but talk about how this interacts between the media, social media, on our phones, and Donald Trump having 4 different trials that he's coming up for and yet running for office. It's obviously unprecedented. But here's what I want to talk about next. The Johnny Depp and Amber
Amber
Amber,
Heard,
thank
yep.
you. All right. Did you watch it at all, Trace?
Yep.
Jason?
Not a frame. I saw the highlights. I caught social media posts about
Okay.
it, but I didn't watch it. No,
Now,
not like Tracy did.
folks out there, it was a state court case. So therefore, cameras were allowed in the courtroom, and that judge had the discretion to let them in or not. And much like OJ, for those of us that were alive and cognizant back then of what we did, translation, I was a young lawyer. Likewise, state court case, judge allowed the cameras in, but doesn't have to. In federal court, folks, never allowed in, which, by the way, I have a huge problem with, but we won't talk about that today. Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, without any question, the coverage of that absolutely bolstered Johnny Depp and buried Amanda Heard.
Amber.
Why do I say Amanda?
I don't know.
All right. First of all, fair characterization of that or not, Jason, just on what you saw, the snippets?
Just based on the snippets that I saw, but more so on the social media churn of the coverage of that, I read articles. I go to a couple dozen online sources, periodicals, newspapers, magazines, just online sites a day looking for content for my show. And therefore, I think of myself as being relatively well informed. And what I saw,
Trace goes, not so much.
I'm glad you think that.
Well, then again, you guys were talking about
Looks good
little
on you,
Debbies
though.
and ding dongs today on your show. So good to see the in-depth reporting.
that said,
Sorry, I apologize.
That said,
we digress, Tracy.
It's well informed about many, many, many things, including that.
are you quite
Please
done?
continue. I believe it's finished, but sure.
The online army, I hesitate to say the bros, like bro, you never could believe this about Johnny Depp or whatever, but he hit the I guess in a lot of cases the toxic men sort of rallied around Johnny Depp and villainized Amber Heard to just an incredible, unfortunate point that you're right. She ended up failing. She didn't fail. I mean, the process failed her in the sense that everybody rallied around movie star Johnny Depp, and she ended up getting characterized a certain way. Now, my takeaway on the whole thing, just sort of like being culturally aware that it existed and this all happened and sort of public sway kind of went his way, is that, right or wrong, my hot take was that they're both batshit crazy, and maybe one's more batshit crazy than the other one is.
Right.
So nobody's a knight in shining armor here. Nobody's pristine in this whole thing.
Right.
It got muddy on both sides, and both ended up with mud on their faces. So there's that. But yeah, you are right. I mean, the spin on social media and the way that the troops, if you will, rallied around Johnny Depp, they did not rally around her in the same way. Trace.
I agree, and I think to your point about the very technical term "batshit crazy," which I love, and it's true. The difference
on both sides,
I think, 100%. I think where Amber's biggest mistake was that she did not own her crazy.
Yep.
So she made
Johnny
herself,
Depp did.
He absolutely
and
did.
was self-deprecating.
And so you're like, yeah, fair. That seems real.
Well, if you're going to drink a gallon of wine in the morning, it better be full.
It might, right. Yeah. And guess what? Like, yeah, some shit happened, and it wasn't great.
Right.
She wasn't great either.
Right.
It wasn't, and I never felt that he was really trying to villainize her. It was more of like, listen, we were super toxic. We were in this together.
Right.
It was a mess. And I think people can relate to that.
Right.
She then decided to play victim.
Countersue.
And cry and I would never, oh my God. And they're like, did you say, and they would say whatever horrific thing that I'm sure fit the situation. And she's kind of like, well, yeah. I mean, just own it.
Right.
Because I think then you make yourself relatable. She had no chance against him. And it's not because he's this amazing actor.
Right.
He owns his shit. She did not. And
that's interesting.
The thing that I think people do not understand to the degree that they maybe should is she lost with women.
Oh, women. That's what you said, bros.
Massively.
And that's where I thought women they absolutely buried her ass.
Crucified her.
And I want to ask you about that. Mm-hmm. Some people.
But there is a woman-hating contingent that rallied around him without question.
But my question is.
It was different, though.
Were you concerned at all about, some would say some women are hypercritical of other women?
It's a huge
okay.
problem.
So did that come into play?
Absolutely.
Did that help him?
Yes. However, the problem is there are women who, I don't care if it's a sexual assault case, I don't care a domestic violence, they need we do this in self-protection all the time. We need to create differences between ourselves and that person because it's too scary to think like, oh my God, that could be me. Those are the scariest cases, right? Where you're like, oh my God, a woman's walking down the street, she gets mugged and raped. I mean, that could be anyone, right?
So that's why, she was wearing a short skirt.
Reasons, right? So that she could have somehow prevented this because then I
can't be hit.
Could somehow prevent this.
To me, this is what I try to do in every case is figure out exactly what Tracy said. And that is people are so quick to blame, especially the person that is reporting.
Yes.
And I hate it when we say complain, but that are reporting this behavior or what happened bad. And to me, the whole thing is because once the jury decides or you get in their mind that, oh my God, this was so random, it could happen to anybody, my kid, my wife, me, etc., then they will follow you.
Right.
But instinctively, I think, Trace, we try to do exactly, we call it victim shaming, victim blaming.
It's self-protection, though.
Right.
That's the reason we do it. It's not just because we're horrible people.
No, it's because that way could never happen to me.
Right, and then I feel safer in the world. If I have to look around and say, oh my God, this could happen to me, this could happen to me, then I have to face the fact that maybe I'm not safe, and that's terrifying. So if I can find a way to spin it like, yeah, but I would never go to that restaurant or bar, but I would have never worn that, then I'm protecting myself saying I have some control here, right? So, and she, fill in the blank, could have done something differently, so then it's her fault, so then I can feel better that it won't happen to me.
The legal spin that I want to just, not really spin, what I want to remind everybody about, what that case was about, is called defamation, libel, slander. It's a very, very unusual case. And I can't tell you the last time I'm even aware that one was tried in front of a jury. And what happened was after they got a divorce or during the divorce, whatever, Amber did some opinion piece and said something along the lines of, well, we, victims of spousal abuse. So that's what the whole case was. And his deal was, Johnny's whole case was about, you should never have said that. Obviously, you meant it about me. Obviously, everyone knew it meant me, and it cost me various jobs and so forth and so on. So that was the case until she then countersued, which in my opinion, in civil cases, is a horrible strategy that lawyers who do not try cases for a living often do, to think of it's just a big wash. And I think it failed miserably. And where she should have gone is like, look, he's trying to make me to blame for everything. I called it the way that I saw it. That's what it felt to me. I'm sorry if he thinks I got it wrong. Jason?
Do you think, Ven, that at a certain point, the whole circus becomes such a swamp of he said, she said, that the grander truth, if it's even possible to arrive at that, gets completely lost? Because it starts with the abusee accusing the abuser of the presumed or alleged abusee being, saying, hey, he abused me.
Right.
He then says, no, she abused me. And then she comes back, well, no, that's BS. He abused me. I'm the abused. And then back and forth. And then all the muddy, awful details come out that we know, now.
But we're going to disregard.
Right.
And then at a certain point, everybody just goes, ick, I need to take a shower.
Right. Great.
Does the Vegas dealer hand slap, turn upside down, show palms, and walk away from the table kind of thing? Like, I don't have any chips up my sleeve as I leave my post. And nobody ultimately wins. I mean,
now I will tell you, I was proven wrong. There, I said it, Tracy.
Oh,
wow.
It's the first step.
Ooh, I'm gonna faint.
Hold on, Tracy.
I feel a little. I don't have enough oxygen.
When I was watching what I watched, and my beautiful wife Mallory was paying attention all day, every day, right? Yeah. And would send me snippets and so forth. And I think it's important as a trial lawyer today to at least know this stuff, because I'll ask questions about that. It could become relevant for me in another type of a case. But to answer your direct question, Jason, I thought there was so much shit on both sides that they both were so crazy. Drugs, alcohol, sex, which of course are all great combinations. The fact of the matter is that I thought the jury was going to say, no to you, go away. And wow, was I wrong, right? And so I have to admit that did surprise me because that's exactly what I thought it was gonna be. But Trace, one of the things that I have to admit I was a little concerned about is this women on women bashing thing. I thought it was potentially highly destructive. And
It is.
imagine if you're Amber, and again, I'm not calling her, I have empathy for people. I don't feel
Sure,
sorry for her.
sure.
Right? But she'll make another movie and be fine, is what they say. But will she? And the answer, I'm concerned.
Oh, I think she's kind of not canceled, but I think
Well,
Well, she's clear. They both are clearly toxic. The way that they talk to each other and dealt with each other, it's scary for both of them and any partner in their life. And I just hope that for their sake that they can learn from that and somehow go, that was complete bullshit. I never want that to happen
I
again,
feel
and then
like-
make it happen.
doesn't she almost need like some years in the wilderness and before
Oh
a
my
director
God.
goes a director's stunt casting for his movie that wants to get some publicity going for his small little movie puts her in a
Puts her
meaty
in.
role and it's like Amber Heard's big comeback, like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction kind
Right.
of thing.
What do you think, Trace?
The biggest, I get like,
Well, it's a lot of.
it is because
lot of
it's,
shit.
I hate what women do to each other. It makes me so angry. And I remember my daughter when she was in elementary school and the girls are bullying and, all this stuff. And I said, can you imagine if women and girls were just nice to each other and they just built each other up? And she looked at me and she said, Mom, we could rule the world.
Well, I thought you already do.
Well, we try.
Well-
but there's a lot of bashing to keep us down.
There's no question about
and
that.
so we don't rule the world. We don't. And so I felt
It's getting more even.
I felt yeah.
I mean, it's
getting there.
The patriarchy isn't as entrenched as it was in 1957.
No, of course. I do believe though the women play a enormous role in that because we're harder on ourselves than anyone else. Women dress for other women.
Right.
Usually.
Right.
It's not this like men are like, I don't give a shit. Put on a
Now
sweatshirt.
you're, now
like,
you're
let's
quoting
go.
me. Now,
Well, but
did Mallory
I-
put you up to that?
Oh, maybe. But I did feel very sorry for Amber Heard. I did. My heart went out to her. I felt like her counsel
Yes.
fucked her over.
Yes.
I really did.
Yes.
If you
Can I
Yeah,
interrupt for 1 second?
Of course.
I'm not mansplaining.
I know. Yeah.
These counsel are not personal injury counsel. These were corporate law firms who got paid by the hour. Those folks typically, not 100%, but 99.9, don't try lawsuits to a jury very often. So
They
It was
try to a
clear.
I
settlement.
absolutely agree with
It was
you.
clear.
Is that right? They try to a settlement?
Or to, yeah, of course, or an arbitration or a motion in front of a judge that never goes to a jury. So they absolutely agree with you. They lack the sophistication of knowing this phenomena, which is, Trace, I'm an old white male. We talk about that in my cases all the time about
Right.
having to worry if our client's a female or
You
if we
have
have
to.
a male client, but what's the wife, how's she going to play in front of the jury, to use the term we talk about. So please continue, but there's no question this is a real thing that affects so many people.
Absolutely. And I think going back to what we said about trying to make us different than others, right, as a protective mechanism, these are already two celebrities who are unrelatable to, 99% of people. They're already going to look at them as like privileged. What are they getting out of this? What's the end game here? Does she want to make a movie? There's so many already preconceptions of like, these are not my people, right?
Right.
Where you connect with people is through the shit we all go through. And in relationships, in life, in, substance abuse, in all of the things, where I felt like it got lost is she tried to play a role,
Right.
which was very obvious. Because then you're playing, if I sat here and I spoke like this and I told you that it's just a lovely day to garden, and then you hear some video of me like, what the fuck, you motherfucker? Like,
Right.
you're going to go, whoa.
No.
Like, who are you?
That's so true.
You
So
got to
imagine-
laugh out of Chelsea.
Chelsea loved that one.
Right? But it's
so true.
And that's what
So-
happened to her.
Next step. So had her team,
Yes.
and they have to have public relations people, boop, boop,
Yeah.
go near perfect media, Chelsea.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
they had
it's true.
folks advising, which clearly they did, and if they didn't, then they
Right.
screwed up even more than we already think. To tell her, like, yeah, admit, right?
Right.
Admit that I was a complete asshole to Johnny Depp.
Right.
Okay. I loved him. I hated him. We were toxic together. My bad. And just kept it. And let me tell you about why I wrote the article. Because
Right.
I did view myself as being now what one thing you guys may not know, that whole case absolutely could have disappeared had one of the things you have to do under libel, slander, defamation is, as a lawyer for the victim, Johnny Depp, you write him, say, retract it. All she had to do is go, I retract the statement about being a victim of domestic abuse. In my opinion, I was. But I might not be speaking for other people. Other people may not think I was a victim. So I want to apologize to Mr. Depp. I wasn't trying in any way to hurt him. You know what I mean? Just do something like that. And by the way, it destroys the whole, if it's a retraction, if it's considered a retraction.
Oh, disregard, right?
And then the whole thing goes away.
Yeah.
That's all it took. And she would never do that and never even do it in trial. Like, listen, let me tell you why I did what I did and why all this other crap is, I did all this stuff. Because I think that's where your point was, Trace. That's kind of what he did.
That's exactly what he did. And he was funny and he was self-deprecating, as you said, and he was relatable in the I was kind of screwed up that night. I don't remember. And people went, oh yeah, been there. And right. And it made it relatable. You didn't like either one of them. They were both crazy. You didn't have to like him. He wasn't looking for you to feel all of this sympathy for him. He seemed genuinely traumatized when recordings were played. I mean, I have specialized in trauma for a long time. Maybe I'm wrong and he's just an amazing actor. There were certain things that he did that were true trauma responses, and you could tell and it felt real. I believe that her coaching was this idea of a woman and what a victim of domestic violence would look like,
right,
which is meek and sad and soft-spoken.
She is an actress, by the way.
She is 100%. And she was acting, and you knew it. So instead of being like, no, listen, I was toxic too. I made mistakes as well. There was still domestic violence here,
correct,
and I was still
on
mistreated.
both sides. Why wasn't that just said?
Right.
There was domestic abuse on both sides, and we both were assholes. And I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and
for
I was abused
for the role I played.
Exactly. And I think if she just would have done that,
own your shit.
Her counsel was this grandfather view of this is what a victim looks like.
Right.
Be the little girl victim, and
right,
then everyone will feel sorry for you, because they're not going to feel sorry for you if you're like, no, I'm rah,
And who comes out of that whole thing looking like the star? The female lawyer for Johnny Depp.
Oh my God, she
gets made a partner, guys.
I know.
Like 2 days after
She
trial.
kind of was amazing.
Book deals.
She was amazing.
Movie deals.
I know.
Okay, she's good. She was very good, but it's just
It was also like a soft dunk, like
and then
the
of course,
softball,
and then
she's
it's the woman taking
right,
on the woman doing the
right,
examination, right?
That shows you how poorly Amber represented herself, because a woman going after a woman in that situation would normally ignite the fire of women shaming, victim shaming. It could have gone completely the other way.
No question. Jay, last thoughts, baby.
Did Johnny Depp smartly, almost perhaps to an accidental genius level, coast on his charm built up through years of being in the Pirates movies, Disney, of being Willy Wonka and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, of being in those Tim Burton movies? And I could go through his entire IMDb.
Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself.
Yeah. I could go through his entire IMDb, but there's a certain level of Johnny Depp seems eccentrically, sort of artistically harmless, sort of like this, like he's got an image around him that isn't the same as an Alec Baldwin, who carries an aura of masculine menace with him.
Arrogance.
Even when he's being funny, Alec Baldwin
with
drips almost kind of a toxic masculinity, sort of an angry, he's a presence, right? So
right. Interesting.
Now, in an alternate universe, this entire thing plays out the same, but your Johnny Depp is played by Alec Baldwin,
right? And then
except
you lose.
They're not playing it.
Right.
Like it is Alec Baldwin,
right?
Now, and forget Alec Baldwin's whole thing with the film set and the shooting death and all that stuff. Just Alec Baldwin instead of Johnny Depp. Now, does she seem a little more victim-y, playing that card if you've got this hulking masculine dude as opposed to the kind of fey, Johnny Depp? Woo!
Right.
It was all, we were both crazy.
Right.
I mean, does that? Am I onto something?
You are. I think also though, circling back to the beginning, people have preconceptions of people going into something. So we're already looking for Alec Baldwin to be a dick. So therefore things happen and you're like, yeah, he's a dick.
And he
fair.
doesn't disappoint
And
most
he
of the
doesn't.
time.
No, and you're like, all right, yeah, she was the victim. I think the flip side of that is that sort of my like gardening analogy earlier, and then you hear this voice come out.
Right.
That could have been, he had more to lose from that. He somehow managed to own both and in a way that, because that could have, you're Disney and you're saying this stuff,
Right.
and this is happening, and this
Right.
is happening. That could have been mind blowing. This guy will never, oh my God, I was so wrong about him. Instead, I think his owning it, and I just don't know that we're ready for women to own it yet. I really don't. I don't know if we're quite.
Wow, she just set the table for the next
For
episode.
the next
of this
episode,
podcast.
we go.
Women Owning It by Tracy Stein.
There you go. Yep.
Well-
I'm ready for it.
Fascinating stuff for you guys. Can't thank you enough for being on. Jason, plug the show. Do it.
Jason Carr Drive every weekday, 9 a.m. sharp. Old television habits die hard. Could I go at 8:58? Could I go at 9:03? Sure. Could I go at 9:15? I could. I try to be right on the money every day at 9 a.m. and I'd appreciate if you'd watch me. You can find me at Jason Carr TV on Facebook. That's where I do the show live. Also, Monday through Thursday at 9 p.m., I do a show for fun, Overdrive. We play games, we do fake game shows, that sort of thing. But anyway, presented by 855 Ven Fights. It's Jason Carr Drive on Facebook Live every morning on my page at 9 a.m.
Tracy Stein.
Yeah. Thank you for having
Party
me.
shot.
I'm just very happy to be part of conversations, and it's important stuff. And I appreciate the psychological interest because I think it matters a whole lot more than we give it credit at times.
To me, it's everything.
You're right.
Inside a courtroom, the things that people think about and the biases and prejudices they come in with or not,
Yep.
and how they perceive a particular interaction, it wins and loses lawsuits. And it changes people's lives.
Yep.
And I think it's important that we all know that and get that. So, podcast 27, the psychology in the law and media. Boy, guys, that was fun. Thank you.
That was great.
Everybody out
Thank
there,
you.
love you, fighters. Talk to you soon. Yeah, I know. Chelsea says, wrap up and get your ass back in the chair. Do more podcasts. Yes, Chelsea. Love you. Bye, guys. Thanks.